Well, what is going on YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. Today on the table in front of us, we have something that I thought I would not have again. We have a buck fixed blade. Now, there's a story behind why I have this. So, I have been a camper and an outdoors person my whole life. That's just how I was raised. When I was about 7 or 8, my dad decided that it was time for me to have a real camping knife. I'd always had knives, as long as I can remember, but a fixed blade that would serve when we were camping. And so my dad got me a Buck 119. Well, now those have been around since the 40s, so even though I'm old, that shouldn't come as a terrific surprise. And I had that knife. It was my primary camping knife until I was in my early 30s. It really was. The 420, mine was 420. The Bose treated 420, Boz treated, excuse me, 420 steel served me very well. It was just a great knife. But then, you know, better materials, different blade shapes started to catch my attention, and so the Buck moved into my backup gear. And unfortunately, somewhere along the line, it seems to have disappeared. Now, I had moved on. My carry and camping stuff, I've showed you my fixed blades many times, changed, as did my interest in handle materials. The standard black plastic handle that Bucks have is not that interesting to me. I like a full tang, all that stuff. But a while ago, Buck decided to release the 119 and this, which is the 120 General, in a Pro series, in S35 VN and green-brown micarta. And that's what this is. Now, this belonged to JB over at Big Red EDC, and now it belongs to me. And I own it for a couple of reasons. One, there's just a lot of history here for me. I'm super fascinated by it, how much it carries me back to the old days when I was camping, how far it brings me back into my past. Do I have knives that I like better? Well, yeah, of course. But this is just going to be a permanent part of the collection now because of what it is. Now, is it still a buck? Yeah, the handle is really thick. And unfortunately, on mine, back here at the tail end, right at the plunge, there's a little bit of Buck QC. I don't know if you can see the grind on that side versus that side. They could have done a little better there. But these are about $199, coming in just under 200 bucks. For whatever it's worth, the grind at the front of the blade is perfect. It is hollow ground, S35 VN. It's got Buck Fuller, which they added in the 60s or 70s to the 119s and to their other knives. The micarta is, as all of the micarta, all their handles are, it is glued on and resined, so you can't take this apart and rescale it even if you wanted to. I mean, you could, but I'm not going to do that. However, this micarta has considerably more grip to it because there's texture than the standard black plastic that they use. And even though it is very thick, for my size hands, and I have big hands, it is still surprisingly comfortable. In fact, when I pulled this thing out of the sheath for the first time, I was sort of amazed at how familiar it was. Now, this comes with the standard Buck leather sheath, which are okay. I was a little surprised to find out how much they had changed. As you can see, this is a taco-style leather sheath with a plastic insert. Now, my old 119 had an edge like this on both sides, I think, or at least it was considerably thicker leather, and it didn't have a plastic insert, and the fitment was better. This rattles. Sadly, companies like Buck, well, anyway, we've talked about Buck knives. I very much wish Buck would retake their place, their sort of place of primacy as an American-made knife company. I really do. They have the designs. They just don't really. It doesn't feel like they put the effort into it anymore, which is really a bummer. But anyway, Speaking of Green Micarta, even spaced through the handle here, this is the Green Micarta, this is Green Micarta, as is this line down here, which I think is very cool. I think one of the reasons I was so interested in getting this, right, is that very recently, Hinderer released a version of the K-bar knife. Now, I have a K-bar, which is here. And as you can see, these knives are very similar, not the same, but very similar in design. The K-bar, of course, is a flat grind, slightly longer handle. This is the dog's head version instead of the USMC or the US Army version, and that's because I'm not a military guy. And I didn't feel that I needed to own a knife that was military when they make this excellent dog's head version, which I love quite a bit. It has a variance on the guard here, and of course the pommel is different. But Hinderer made himself a version of the K-bar, and they were very expensive, very limited. And I thought, well, can't you still get something like this? This is 1095 high carbon steel. Can't you get something like this in better materials? And then it dawned on me that I had seen one recently on JB's channel, and yes, you can, for $200. Now that's a lot of money for a buck knife, but it's not a lot of money for this much S35VN. So where you choose to go with that will be entirely up to you. Excuse me. Because of the little variations in the QC here, it's hard for me to suggest that you run out and get one. The General here, of course, was famous because it was used in the movie Scream, because it is a very pokey looking knife and it is very long. But they do make an S35VN 119 and they make their little Skinner as well. So there's a whole bunch of these in varying prices if you're interested. I love this knife, not because of what it is necessarily sitting here in front of me, because of what it represents to me. As you can see, it's got the Boss Heat Treat logo on it, and then it's got the S35VN on this side. It's just this Buck 120 Plus, which is very cool. It is a very, as I mentioned, pokey design. If you were going to get into an argument, this is a pretty good short sword with which to end that argument. Do I wish the grind was perfect? Yeah, I do. But that's okay. Instead of comparing this to my folders, we'll do one. You can see the thing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 inches long. The blade, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 6 3/4 of cutting on 7 1/4 inches of S35VN. So if we put it up against a folding knife, it just dwarfs the folding knife. So we're going to use some fixed blades as size comparison tools. I'm not sure if you will have seen these before, but you may have. First is a knife that is very common in the outdoor world. This is the Bark River Knives Bravo. It's the Bravo 1. This is the rampless version. And as you can see, the buck knife just dwarfs it. This is another knife with a very thick handle, but that's because it's very thick blade stock. What else can we compare this against? What do we have out here? Oh, here's an interesting one. This, of course, is a very meaningful knife to me and just a superb knife all the way around. This is the Chris Reeve Nyala, also S35VN, also hollow ground. These are about $300 if you can find one because they are discontinued. But of course, you get a lot less blade. Different knives for different purposes. And then finally, the only Mora that I own, this is the Kansbol. This is a great knife, right? So handle area is about the same size, but you get just exponentially more blade. Moras are remarkable tools for the money. This is very light too. But, this is mostly just so you can see the handle size. Everybody should have that one knife that is meaningful to them, not just because of how it works. And I assure you, this knife works remarkably well. I have cut most of the things I normally cut with it just to see how the S35 is done. It has a very nice edge on it. It's a very tall secondary bevel, but it's reasonably thin down here at the bottom, and it slices exceptionally well. And as I said, it is very pokey, and it is, again, a bit of a short sword. But you should have that knife that is meaningful to you, not just because of, what it is or how much it costs or, the design or any of that stuff, but because it holds meaning to you in other ways. And I got to tell you, the Buck General here is one of those knives. Like I said, I have better knives. But this one's just going to hold a special place in my heart, I think. Let's weigh it. That is important to people that, excuse the noise, wow. Let's weigh it, see what we come in at. First we will weigh it without the sheath. It's not terrifically heavy and it is fairly well balanced because of that thick handle. All right, 8.4 ounces, not too bad. And if we put Buck's leather sheath on it, which matters because that's what you're gonna feel hanging on your belt, we're at 12.1 ounces. Not horrible. Not great, but not horrible. I'm going to have my buddy Chris Luthi, and I will put a link to his website down in the description, make me a full kydex sheath for this, because I think it deserves it. I really do. Let's get this out of the way. So there we have it. This is the Buck 120 General Pro. S35VN, green micarta. It is a rat tail style design, which means this narrows very thin right here and runs its way down the handle. It's not as strong as a full tang blade, but if you really had to, I imagine you could probably beat the crap out of this. I'm not gonna, because this is more a collector's piece to me than anything else. But like all good collector's pieces, if I really needed it, if I had to grab something and this is what was handy and run out into the field, as with every other buck knife going back to 1940, this would serve me as well as anything else. It would do the job, absolutely. And quite frankly, because of the size of this thing, it would look kind of cool doing it. Anyway, this has been the Buck 120 General Pro. Thank you so much to JB over at Big Red EDC for sending this along to me. I really appreciate the opportunity to have one of these. I hope you've enjoyed this look at it. If you have any questions about the Buck here or any of my knives, feel free to ask down in the comments below. We'll see you next time.